Have you ever been touched by an angel? Let me tell you a few stories of some people who believe they have been touched by an angel. Walt Shepard grew up in a Christian family, grew up following Christ. As he became an adult, he began to wander from God. He began to run from God, made bad decisions. His life was falling apart. He was miserable, decided to take his life. Driving down the highway late at night, decides to slam his car into a wall. Massive explosion when it happens. There's a fire. The ambulance shows up. The fire department, the police, nobody can go into the fire to get him. And then they see two men go into the fire, pick him up, carry him out, help him get into the ambulance. They go to look for the men later and they can't find them. No one knew who they were or where they came from. Walt knew that that was a message from God. It took him for a while to recover from his injuries, but when he did, he came back to God because he believes he was touched by an angel. Dale Knowles. He's driving down the highway. He's a Christian. A car slams into him. He's heading towards a wall. His arms are pinned down because of the accident. It looks like he's going to slam into the wall and die, but at the last second, the wheel turns and the car escapes the wall, the collision, and his life is spared, and it turns out his injuries are minor. Who turned the steering wheel? Dale believes it was turned by an angel. He was touched by an angel. Phil and Steve, they were off-duty police officers. They were trying to find a gang that was selling drugs in New Jersey. They were eating dinner one night. They heard something going on at another table. They went to investigate. They found 20 teenagers in a cave filled with drugs, filled with a drug dealer. They had weapons, but when Steve and Phil walked in, they quietly arrested them, cleaned out the cave, called for backup. They got the teenagers, the drug-selling people. They interviewed them, and they said, "Why did you let those two men take you so easily?" They said, "Two men?" There were 25 men that came into that cave to get us. We were outnumbered. Who was with Steve and Phil? Well, they were both Christians. They were praying the whole time. They believed they were touched by an angel. Let me tell you about the missionaries in the Congo. In 1950, there was a civil war going on, and they thought that one of the rebelling tribes was against them, was coming through. There was a missionary station there, a school. They came to wipe them out. Late at night, they had them surrounded. The missionaries were in the chapel inside, praying all night long, asking God to protect them. They'd put a fence up before that night. The enemy warriors never came through the fence. About a year later, the chief of that tribe came to Christ. They were asking him why he never attacked those missionaries, and he said, "Why would we?" They were surrounded. There was at least 100 soldiers surrounding them, wearing brilliant white uniforms. No way we were going to attack them. Those missionaries believed they were touched by an angel. In World War I, the Germans are advancing on the English. They got them outnumbered. They got them pinned down. They're ready to just massacre a whole mess of them. And they stop. Middle of the night, they stop and they retreat. What happened? The British caught up with them, took some prisoners, asked the prisoners why they stopped attacking that night. They said, "Why wouldn't we? We saw those big glowing beings over top of you in the sky. There's no way we would attack." Interesting. There was a National Day of Prayer going on in England that very time. The soldiers who were protected that night believed they were touched by an angel. World War II, very similar situation going on. The Germans are ready to overrun the English. The English are there's no way they can win. All of a sudden the Germans stop and retreat. Eventually, the British captured some of them. They interview them. Same story. They said, we were getting ready to call the charge, and there was this line of light between us and you, and we knew we couldn't pass through it. Interesting. There was a National Day of Prayer going on in England that day. What happened? They were touched by an angel. A magazine editor who wanted to keep his name out of it because he didn't want it to be about him tells the story of his daughter who was in a coma, dying with cancer. Nurse goes in that night, and there's 3 or 4 angels over top of her bed. Nurse is amazed by what she sees. She feels like she shouldn't disturb. She leaves. The next morning, the girl comes out of the coma completely healed. What happened? That girl touched by an angel. Magazine editor didn't believe in angels. Now believes in angels. Maybe you don't believe in angels. But when you get with God and look back at your life, I think you will see occasions when God protected you, God spared you, God blessed you, because you were touched by an angel. If you got some stories that you have experienced yourself, personal stories, send them to me. I'm Dave Earley. You can make comments there underneath this video. I'm happy to read your stories. I find them interesting. You can follow us on Facebook or on YouTube. Let God encourage you with His amazing spirit beings, angels.